You know what? Sod it. It's just not working tonight. We're sacking that off now. Go away. I don't know what's going on with them. I don't know what's going on with the music tonight. It just doesn't want to seem to play. Oh, wait. There we go. No idea. No idea what's happening with the music this evening at all. I need to also quickly grab up some notes because that's at least working. Where am I? We need to get rid of that. We need that. That's what we need. Huzzah. There we go. We should pause there for a second because I know people are still working their way in. I'm running late, which is why we're a bit all over the shop this evening. So apologies for that, but we'll let people come in. If you're watching on catch up, what can our tinsel? There you go. Tinsel is your word to stick in the comments. If you're watching on catch up, stick down the word tinsel and then stick down who your best player of the season for your team so far is. We'll check those out in the comments as we go. But the warm-up question is there, folks. What hockey-related Christmas gift do you want? Always appreciated when folk interact with the show. We're just, like I say, just making sure people are coming in. I did hear this, Luca. I won't lie. I won't lie. It was mentioned to me. You were a bit happy about it. Let's just quickly check that in, because obviously people are slowly working their way in for bits and pieces. I've also just clicked the wrong buttons. What I wanted to look at was just see whether, just checking some other bits of information that work their way in. They have not as of yet. That is fine. There's always that horrible moment, of course, folks, where, like I say, because you do this show and you're staring at so many bits and pieces all at once, has the news started skipping you by? And the answer is sometimes yes, other times no. Because there it was, the little bit of news we've been waiting for, because it has been announced momentarily. We'll click some buttons there and we'll get starting momentarily. I've just realised there's a big mark down my hoodie, which is really annoying. Just quickly going to tweak this out. Not love, live now. Here. And we need. I really can't spell for love nor money at the moment. Having an absolute mare of it. There we go. Let's do that. Let's do that. There we go. We'll pause momentarily then as folk are still working their way in, because I've just noticed the time. We should probably get going. Like I said, even though I'm running late, though I was a few minutes behind, and I'm only 3 minutes behind now, so I'll probably work that out. But let's get going anyway, shall we? Guys, gals, and the gender fluid and all beyond the binary. It is Wednesday. It is 8 PM, and welcome back once again to the BOTW What's Current stream. My name is Anthony Russell, here to walk you through the weird, wonderful, and wacky world that is British ice hockey. We focus on the national. We don't focus on the national division. I've literally. This is the day I'm having. I've slipped straight back into the old routine. We don't just focus on the national division, but we definitely do talk about it, because as of 25-26, the BOTW What's Current stream looks at the lot. Every game from every division, senior, men's and women's across British ice hockey. We will have a look at it. From Leeds to Lee Valley, Belfast to Bradford, we talk about the absolute lot from every single division of senior British hockey. That's what we are here for. So we definitely do talk about the national division a little bit, but we'll also talk about the Elite League, the fact that, and what's happening there with Nottingham now top of the table as the title race is already starting to emerge and things are starting to bubble below the surface. And there is huge news, of course, out of the Elite League at the moment. We'll talk about the National Division and the fact that Finn Howells is back. Max Wright is out, but for how long, and the emergence onto the scene of Oscar Minton and much more. We'll talk about Division 1 and the fact that there was goals galore in both the North and the South, as well as a little bit of transfer news out of Telford. And Solihull into the bargain. We'll talk about Div 2. We'll talk about the SNL and the fact that they still won't just put a list of fixtures on their website. And we'll talk about the WNIHL, that massive game in the Elite League that, of course, has thrown the title race into some question already, which is fantastic. Hope you're doing well, everybody. Hope everything is awesome after the weekend. I won't lie, as we start the show, been a really, really rough couple of days here. It was last week was pretty tough into the bargain, and then we've had a leak in the roof, which is a bit annoying. And yeah, just the frustration of the lad waking up at 6:30 on Saturday morning, as he is wont to do, and water coming through his ceiling, which is frustrating. However, we've got the roofers in. They started. Should hopefully be done by the weekend, and it is obviously dropping a large chunk of money. But we're going to have a nice new roof, and this is what we save money for. You know, when these eventualities happen. But I won't lie, it's been a pretty tough sort of 4 or 5 days. Just sort of dealing with all the stress and all the bits and pieces of that, on top of trying to get Christmas sorted as well, and just living life as a person. But these things have a way of working out. You know, all that happens. We managed to get everything sorted quickly. Got somebody in to come and do bits and pieces. They needed somebody to be there to make sure the scaffolders could get in, and it was on a day I was off, so I was able to do some jobs and come back. That's life, isn't it? And I appreciate that people are dealing with sort of tougher bits and pieces. We've had to completely rejig the house. You do not want to see what's behind the camera right now, but we had to move the boy out of his room, shuffle a lot of bits and pieces around. The house is at a point as well where we want to do a lot of refurbing anyway. So all it means is we're just starting early, I think is probably the best way to describe that. But that does not stop the wheels turning, and also as well, because there was I was saying to my wife, oh, you know, do I need to take a pause this week and just sort of chill out maybe? And she just goes, but you enjoy doing this, so why would you stop? And that's right. So we're back to talk about ice hockey, because that's one of the best things that we do. And of course, we need to make sure that we do our regular bit of housekeeping. So if you're old and you've been around for a while, hum along because you know the words. If you're new, let's catch you up. Bannersonthewall.wordpress.com. Your number one's website for all things related to British ice hockey. Follow me on my commentary journey this year as I commentate on the Elite League for the Guildford Flames from my little perch high atop the spectrum. In the Box Thinking is your insight into what it means to be a commentator in the Elite League, as well as a breakdown of every game that I managed to see. We've got also as well, we'll have a few bits and pieces. We've done a little bit of travelling around. We've been back to Basingstoke, which was awesome. We'll be going to Belfast in January. Lots of stuff coming out of the website, as well as the new Hockey Stories piece that is going to be worked on this weekend, because of course with Guildford being away in Belfast over this upcoming weekend means I've got some extra time on my hands. Really, really excited to get this piece out. It's just taken a bit of time just because of life, but it's going to get there. My plan is to get it out next week. So I'll putting some pressure on myself to get it done, but we will eventually get it there. Should be awesome. Like I say, really, really looking forward to getting that done. And like I say, I just need a bit of time to get it done. So it's going to be my plan sort of Friday and Saturday whilst the Flames are playing, to try and crack on and do some of those bits and pieces. But of course, you've got the better part of nearly 15 years worth of stuff to check out over on the website, bannersonthewall.wordpress.com. And of course, all the joy of all your usual YouTube spiel. Head down to the description where you can get the links to all of our social media. We're on X, we're on Facebook, we're on Blue Sky, so you can check us out there. There's the link to our virtual busking hat over at buymeacoffee.com/BOTW. If you like what you see and you enjoy your British hockey content, and you want to help keep the lights on and the wheels spinning, do go buy some coffee over at buymeacoffee.com/BOTW. We aren't going behind a paywall. It's just the way it is. But like I say, life costs for bits and pieces like that. The money from that goes back into doing BOTW bits. It's not going to go to pay for my roof. This is what my wife and I have savings for. But like I said, it's there. It's all worth. Like I say, if you enjoy what you get and you just want to help support with a few bits and pieces, particularly as there's going to be a few changes coming up probably in the new year. Just like I say, I want to change some of the tech we use for the show. So anything you can chuck in will be appreciated. And of course, as we are edging closer to Christmas, if you like, they've been in the background for a while now, our 3D printed signs. Lee, who is in the chat, there's a link to 3D Lee and his bits and pieces down in the description should you want to order anything of a suitably 3D hockey printed style to go to have yourself. Either way, plenty going on at the moment. What we will do is we will talk, of course, about the really, really big bit of news, because once again British hockey has got itself into a position where it is in the eyes again of the hockey world, and for something of a, as per usual with British hockey, a slightly unusual out of the box reason. The reasoning, if you've not been keeping up with bits and pieces, and some of you, of course, are not big Elite League watchers, and of course, over the last season, over the last couple of months now, where I've been commentating on the Elite League, we have talked about more Elite League stuff here on the show. We did a little bit last year when we were still still NIHL focused, but now, like I say, it feels that we kind of need to talk about it, because there are some waves that will be caused by this. And if you aren't aware of the news, the strongly reported news out of places in Canada, and it is gaining traction, of course, here, is that Milan Lucic is heading to the Elite League. Now, if you are not familiar with Milan Lucic, he is a very, very well-known, very hard-nosed hockey player. Won the Memorial Cup with the Vancouver Giants back in 2007. Won the Stanley Cup with the Boston Bruins in 2011. Played for the Bruins. Played for Calgary for a really, really long time. And was basically known as a proper old school agitator, fighter. A guy for whom maybe the style of play he had, the sun is maybe setting a little bit thereon. However, a guy with immense amount of NHL pedigree. And there's a lot of talk that he is coming to the Elite League. This comes off the back of the fact that he's been out of hockey for a couple of years, signed a tryout contract for the St. Louis Blues, got injured, so his professional tryout contract got extended. Eventually, the Blues released him from his tryout contract, and he was sent on a tryout contract to the Blues AHL affiliate, which is the Springfield Thunderbirds of the American Hockey League, and he was on a tryout contract there, played a few games for the Thunderbirds, and then was released the other day from that contract. And as a result of that, obviously a lot of people are talking, what's going to happen to Milan Lucic? Now, a lot of people may have forgotten why Milan Lucic took some time out of hockey. Now, Milan Lucic was involved in a police incident. He was arrested and was charged for assaulting his wife. There was a domestic incident that resulted in reportedly him pulling her hair, shoving her, being charged with assault. Now, he was never convicted of anything, it should be said. His wife refused to cooperate with the prosecution. He and his wife have now reconciled, it should be said. Now, of course, this does kind of go back to the Hockey Canada World Junior Championships scenario, and those young men who were charged with sexual assault and a variety of other things were found not guilty by a single judge rather than a jury, and we get back to this thing again of not being guilty in a court of law doesn't make an action moral by definition. There are a lot of threads that will obviously not unreasonably be pulled at as a result of this. People will look to the fact that Lucic spent, it says, just double checking the numbers, 17 years, 1,177 games in the National Hockey League between playing for Boston, LA, Edmonton and Calgary. People will look at the fact that bringing a player of that hockey notoriety into the Elite League brings eyes to the Elite League. And it's different eyes from a different perspective because, of course, the exploits of British teams in the Champions Hockey League puts eyes on the league. Particularly, of course, Sheffield's really good run last season. We talk about the fact that the Friendship Four opened the door, and we've had tons and tons of NCAA quality players coming over. And the Elite League has moved away from being a busman's league, a journeyman league for older professionals, and now there is a lot of younger guys. There's still those guys who've bounced around a little bit in the AHL and in the East and in the Coast and done bits and pieces there before kind of coming over here. And guys who are wanting to experience Europe but want to play in a country where English is a first language. Milan Lucic brings different eyes to the game as a result, because he is a bona fide NHLer. Now, a few of us will be old enough to remember the last time an NHLer of that calibre, a Stanley Cup winner of that calibre, came to play in Britain. And it was Theo Fleury. And Theo Fleury had burned his bridges. He was dealing with a variety of issues. Personally, Belfast was an opportunity for him to put a firm foot forward, play hockey, remove himself a little bit from a situation that he'd been in, and kind of start helping to build himself back. Now, Theo Fleury, of course, said some interesting things during COVID that I definitely do not agree with, but I think people will generally agree that for both the man, the club, because he played for playing for Belfast, and the league, that Theo Fleury was generally considered a net positive. Will Milan Lucic be similarly a net positive for the Elite League if he joins? Now, the large overriding rumour is that Milan Lucic will be joining the Fife Flyers. A lot of people have said this for a bunch of different reasons. Firstly, because he appears to have followed a bunch of the Flyers related social media accounts, which, you know, doesn't always help and does give the game away ever so slightly. He did also play in that 2007 Memorial Cup winning Vancouver Giants with a certain gentleman by the name of Garrett Hunt. So not only would he be landing in a different place, he'd be landing in a different place with somebody he knows from his glory days. Lucic was the MVP of the Memorial Cup in 2007 when the Giants took the title. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say that I don't believe in second chances for people, because I do. And there's a lot to be said for people getting the opportunity to rehabilitate themselves. I know this has caused some controversy with some of the the gentlemen involved in the World Junior case, because they have expressed very little to no remorse for the actions that they participated in that caused some of the issues. Lucic has been slightly more contrite, it should be said, and his wife has spoken very openly about the journey that they have been on as a family to kind of come back together. This does not immediately mean that if Milan Lucic lands in these shores, whether it be up in Scotland or in Surrey or anywhere else, that he is going to get an easy ride. Because when you are at that sort of level and you end up playing over here, the reason you are doing that is because you cannot play over there. And ultimately, a lot of people are going to be putting Milan Lucic under the microscope, when ultimately all he wants to do is play hockey. In some ways, if you're wanting to not be noticed, not joining the bottom place team that managed to go on an 18-game skid and has won 2 games out of the last 22, is maybe not the way to do that. However, Fife are slowly on the turn. David Booth to come in about a week and a half's time as well, and we will see if it happens, what happens. But I think a lot of people are understandably not pleased. I think some people very much are, and I'm very, very interested to see if it lasts the season. I'm very interested to see if he's able to play out the time. And I remain cautious about the entire thing. Now, Muggins here, all going to plan. Pfeiffer are due back in Guildford in the new year. So I get to put him on the spreadsheet. I get to make sure I've got his stats down and all those bits and pieces. And yeah, I've got to commentate on the guy. I don't necessarily in that particular position. I can't and have no place to kind of make that moral judgment, because that's not my job to do when I'm commentating. I can commentate on his actions on the ice, and I will do. But this forum is the forum for my thoughts, and ultimately, I don't know. If he has worked at himself and his wife has given him latitude to try and grow and come back from a pretty bad situation, then I walk into this situation with open eyes and hope that he turns up and plays his hardest and does good things for Fife and joins in and doesn't sort of sit separate from everything else. Remains to be seen. But ultimately, there's a lot of people very, very uneasy about this and not liking this, and that opinion is entirely valid as well. And I think that sometimes you don't have to like everything. Just because an NHLer is potentially turning up in the Elite League does not mean everybody has to clap it and think it's a great idea. And there are some times where players turn up in leagues and it doesn't work. And it shouldn't work, and it shouldn't have happened in the first place. All we can do, it's not our decision to make. We don't run the clubs. We're not signing the players. We will sit back, we will watch, and we'll have a good chat about it on here when it comes up from time to time. Stu in the chat. I'm old enough to remember watching Gary Unger play for Peterborough. Must be the most famous ex-NHLer. Not sure at the time. It was really appreciated how famous he was. Certainly of that era. I mean, it's interesting, of course, isn't it, when you think of the NHL lockouts of the modern era in 2004-2005, where we got Eric Cairns, we got Nick Boynton, we got Wade Belak, of course, God rest him in Coventry. You think then of the 2012, 2013 NHL lockout, where we got Paul Bissonnette, we got Matt Bolesky, and it's never been some of those sort of guys that had some name value. And of course, Paul Bissonnette post hockey has gone on to be a very, very large media personality in the hockey space. But yeah, it's interesting. It'll be very, very interesting if it does come off, because like I say, Fleury, arguably in a Hall of Fame career, for some of the bits and pieces he was able to achieve. I don't think Lucic is quite in that same stratosphere, but I think certainly like a guy able to play 1,000 NHL games. We were all talking about David Booth playing 500, and he'd not played in the NHL for the better part of a decade. And now we're talking about Lucic, who played NHL as recently as 2023. So yeah, we're in a bit of a different realm with this one. Fascinating that it's happened, and we will see what comes out of it as a result. Interested to see what you think. I didn't mention it earlier, but of course, that's what the chat is for. Questions, comments, thoughts, feelings, anything you want to throw into there. The other bits and pieces the other bits of news, of course, that we can talk about, because they are going on. The first thing we need to address, because I don't know if he's still in the chat or not, but we will say this anyway. Widnes Wild of Division 1 North, because of course, for those of you unfamiliar, Luca Desadri, netminder for the Wild, likes to pop up from time to time in the chat. Now, a lot of teams these days are doing a lot of these social media videos where they will ask questions. So like the Basin Bison recently did, who's the best and who's the worst at two-touch. D-Side seemed to do fantastic ones with very bizarre questions like which member of the roster would you not want dating your daughter, was pretty funny. Widnes did something that we've seen happen quite a lot in football, which was bring your kit in anything but a kit bag. We saw a Fisher-Price car, we saw a shopping trolley, we saw a variety of things. Luca, if you're still in the chat, whose air fryer was that? Because the last I heard, your dad wasn't aware you owned one. So whose air fryer was it, Luca? Go check out the Widnes Wild social media. Go see what's happening on that one. The other thing I want to do as well, just because we're getting close to Christmas, one thing I want to do here, just while we're talking about bits and pieces, rather than do this at the end when I'm tired and try to shove things in, I realise that BOTW has been a very, very different place this season because of what I'm doing. The writing changed because I wanted to do a different format for talking about stuff. There is lots of really, really good stuff going on everywhere in hockey media. And if you're watching live now, stick some of your other favourites in the chat, because I really, really want to kind of talk very, very briefly about some of the other bits that are going on elsewhere, just because I personally like to shout out other people's work. I think that's kind of what I like to do, and that's what I want to do momentarily. So it's just checking a few bits and pieces. Why would you expose me? It was my girlfriend. I still haven't given. What do you mean expose you? Why do you mean expose you? You did it on film. You did it on film, Luca. And give her back her air fryer, or at least cook her dinner, you silly sausage. But let's talk about some of the other bits and pieces that are going on out there at the moment, because certainly put in the chat some of the other bits and pieces that you, some of your other favourite ones that you're enjoying. Wow, just wow, yeah, I know. But also as well, Luca, you do deserve credit for trying to bring your kit to training in an air fryer. The sideways thinking about that all is fantastic, and you do deserve a credit for it, Luca. It's amazing. Just so whilst we're talking about bits and pieces, there's a couple of we've obviously mentioned them from time to time. We obviously mentioned a few other places from time to time, but let's just quickly talk about some of the other folk that I reckon you should listen to, because of course we're here on a Wednesday night, and like I say, What's Current Stream is on YouTube, and you can kind of listen on YouTube Music, but we're not anywhere else. I'm looking to change that. However, there's lots and lots of really good stuff happening in other places. So I want to shout these people out now because like we're getting into Christmas and bits and pieces like that. And like I say, I still don't know what we're doing. I'm probably not going to do a show on Christmas Eve or anything like that. So let's talk right now, very quickly, before we go into the results of stuff, about some of the people that you should check out. If you like your Elite League bits and pieces, 3 on 3 podcast with David Scott and Jono, really, really enjoy that one. Cat's Whiskers, if you're Nottingham Panthers focused, go check them out. A View from the Bridge, if you like your Belfast Giants bits and pieces, the OGs of British hockey podcasting, go and check them. Go and check them out. They are fantastic. EIHL Face Off with Jordan and Steve. I've been on their show. Really, really enjoyed doing those bits and pieces. Of course, Guildford being Guildford focused, need to smash the computer instead. Need to shout out the Heated Take, which has been really, really interesting. Like I say, Guildford had nothing in terms of fan media and have now got me and them in the space of a couple of months, which is pretty awesome to see. There's I've completely forgotten the name of the Dundee podcast. I think it's like A View from Block C. So do go check those guys out as well. Lots of good stuff in the Elite League. If you're looking the NIHL, National Division wise, of course, Macclestalk Hockey has been a bit spotty. It's mostly just because Jack's got himself a real life job. But between Jack, Charlie, Dan, and Papa McCarthy, they talk about National Division bits and pieces. Make sure you check them out. The Slapshot Syndicate, the boys out of Hull, massive amount of time for Azza, for Brad, and for Rossi for all that they're doing up there. Really enjoy the stuff they do. Do go check those out if you want to look at some National Division related bits. The Lightning lads, if you want an MK focus, go check out the stuff from the Lightning lads. Further down, Zero Pucks Given, NHL South related bits and pieces, and of course they like to have a good focus as well on women's hockey. So do go check those out. In the north, Billingham. The Billingham Stars podcast with Craig Carroll and Jono. Do make sure you go check that out as well. I know they've talked to Henry Stalins and bits and pieces like that. Been fascinating to see or get a North 1 related focus in terms of some of those bits and pieces. There are other bits now that are focused on North 1, but I'm mainly talking kind of podcasty content here. There isn't a ton of stuff about North 2 or South 2, though the Lightning lads, it should be said, do make sure that they have a I do make sure they talk about things like the MK Thunder, like the MK Storm, like the Falcons. So there's a very MK focused in general, and those bits and pieces there. Basically, I just want to shout out all the other cool folk doing cool things. All Blaze No Glory as well, because Andrew just stuck something in the chat for women's hockey with Andrew and Adam doing bits and pieces on there. Do go check that out as well. Her Game, Her Voice as well for a focus on women's hockey. There's so much good stuff out there, and like I say, I rock up for 60 to 90 minutes on a Wednesday night and we garble together, but like I'm aware that people also want to kind of fill their time, and I just want for a few minutes to just delay talking about results, to just tell you about some of the really, really good stuff out there. Go find stuff, enjoy stuff, and if you can't find what you're looking for, maybe be brave and go start it yourself. Enjoy it where you find it. Iron Tigers as well for Telford. Forgot. Apologies there, my dude. But lots of good stuff going on. Speaking of the man himself, he's there in the chat. Andrew Day. Saw Theo Fury play against Coventry Blaze. Most of the Sky don't trying to get on his nerves, which kind of worked because he got thrown after that game. Lucic will have to be on his best behaviour. I saw Theo Fleury in my first season of watching Basingstoke, and it was the game where if the Giants won in Basingstoke, they won the league title. Bison 4, Giants 1. Flurry thrown out. 4,000. Well, Nicky, I don't need to talk about Nicky. I wanted to talk about more sort of specific, because Nicky is a bit like me. We scattershot everything, but it is worth mentioning Nicky as well. 4,000 and counting. Nicky's now been doing it. Obviously, 4,000's gone through a few changes, but over the years, because there was 4 of them, then there was 3 of them, then there's just him, and now you've got Graham involved in it as well. Nicky's been doing it for 7 years, and it's fascinating for me as well, because I'll talk about it, because when Nicky got banned all those years ago, and he rang me up, and I did that interview with him, the first interview with him, and every so often we're sort of in each other's orbits forever. But the fact that 4,000 has been going for 7 years, and Nicky's kind of kept up with it, I'm very, very impressed with the fact that he's stuck with it, and you can see the growth, and you can see the improvement, and you can see that he gives a toss.
And Nicky, when he's motivated, is something else. And I'm just really pleased for Nicky, because I know at the end of the day, and I know he talked about it on Monday on his show, that he wants to get his coaching badges back and he wants to get into it, get back into those kind of things. But when I think back to the first interview we ever did, sat in the bar in Basingstoke, and how far the two of us have come in our journey since that point, doing this, very impressed with what he's been able to do. He's not always done everything in the way people would like him to. I've not always agreed with him, and I won't always agree with him, and he won't always agree with me. But that's the nature of things. But I think Nicky deserves a fair bit of credit for being brave and sticking with it. And his content has changed over time, just like mine has. And I still maintain, if you've not listened to it, his interview he did with Vic Silverwood is probably, I still think, one of the best things he's done. Just good, honest asking of questions to get good, honest answers. It's awesome. Yes, go check out, go support British hockey content. Go do that. And also Door 14 Hockey Podcast as well. Looking forward to seeing those guys when they get over to Belfast. They do British and NHL, which is why they kind of sit in a sort of a weird space. But do go check out the Door 14 boys as well. They should be podcasting live tomorrow, so you can go enjoy that. Either way, let's talk about some hockey that happened over the past weekend. And well, it started out on Friday, and there's meant to be 2 games there, but Belfast missed the boat, or the plane, or neither were flying, or travelling, or whatever. So it meant that the Belfast game in Manchester on Friday was postponed. That will get rearranged at some point. Though, of course, a few people unhappy. It should be said the weather in Belfast was pretty rubbish. As soon as I heard that Belfast weren't travelling on Friday, I did go make a point of checking, and the flight, one of the flights to Manchester weren't flying, and the boats were delayed by 2 hours. Belfast wouldn't have made it. Now, could they have left earlier? Maybe. Could they have left the day before? Maybe. And if we were all full of straw, we'd all be scarecrows. Either way, the one game on Friday evening was up at the Braehead Arena, and it's another couple of points on the board for the Nottingham Panthers. They beat the Clan by 4-3 in regulation. The Clan's form started to dip a little bit after some relatively good bits and pieces. Into Saturday, and there was where Muggins was, of course. The fact that Guildford face off at 6 o'clock, whether it's a Saturday or a Sunday, means they're either first on or last on. And being a Saturday, they were first on. They ended the 2-game winning run of the Fife Flyers, 5-2. Do go check out the In the Box Thinking. That's over on the website, bannersonthewall.wordpress.com. I always embed the highlights in that as well, so you get to watch it. An odd game, disjointed at points. 5 goals in the space of about 5 minutes in the middle of the second period before Guildford just proved to be a little too strong. It does feel like, though, that Guildford, the wheels are turning, and if nothing else, Justin Fazio is proving himself to be quite a find. Elsewhere on Saturday, the second game of Nottingham's Scotland triple header, they get a point out of the Dundee Stars, but an important win for Mark Lefebvre's team as they win in overtime. Otto Nieminen, playoff winner last year with the Panthers, getting the all-important goal for his new employers. Dundee did make it across the Irish Sea eventually. They did make it down to South Wales. Disallowed goals, controversy abounding, but ultimately Ben Bounds doing the business in net for the Cardiff Devils. They won by 2-1 at the Vindico. And then Coventry, who were on something of a skid themselves. I think it was 8 games on the spin without a win, and then they managed to rock up again in Sheffield. And Matt Robson steals it from the Sheffield Steelers again, as the Blaze win by 3-1 at the House of Steel. Sunday then, a 4-point weekend for the Devils. A good solid win for them over the Clan by 5-1. Sheffield rebounding from their home defeat by travelling up to Dundee and shutting out the Stars at the DIA by a score of 4-0. Fife, well, the big homecoming moment and everything like that. And of course, the first weekend as a Fife Flyer for Logan Nielsen. Did get a goal on Saturday in the Guildford game, but just not to be on Sunday. Panthers win the 3rd game of their triple header. 5 points from 6 for the Panthers on their road trip in Scotland, beating Cardiff's total quite comfortably. And then Coventry, well, they had a fantastic Saturday night and were 3-1 up in this game. They forced Guildford into a timeout in the first period at 2-0. But 3 goals in the third from the Flames. Cole Yulee with the game winner. And the Flames have their first 4-point weekend of the season and their first 4-point weekend since February 2025. Looking at the table then, as we said, 5 from 6 for the Panthers in Scotland means that they are top of the Elite League table, and there is already quite a substantial gap. The top 3 pulling away, albeit Belfast have played quite considerably, quite a few games less. 8 points on the table for the Giants that would put them firmly in the conversation for the title. But Panthers 30 from 18, Steelers 28 from 18, Devils 27 from 18. They are the front 3 making the running at the moment. Belfast, Manchester, Guildford, Glasgow and Coventry making up the playoff places at the moment. But as you can see there, Dundee, well, they've almost been all over the place, but they have 4 games in hand on the Blaze. They have quite a few games in hand. They've got 4 games in hand on Guildford. They've got 3 games in hand on Glasgow. They are 3 points back of Coventry with 4 games in hand. The problem, of course, is where will those games in hand come? Because the teams that are lurking around a similar number of games for them are the Clan, the Storm, and the Giants. They're not going to be easy places for Dundee and Mark Lefebvre to pick up some points. And Fife, of course, despite that weekend, they remain bottom of the Elite League table, just 5 points from 18 games played. Into the fixtures then for this upcoming weekend. Belfast welcome Guildford for a double header at the SSE. The first game of that is Friday evening over in Belfast. Glasgow welcome Cardiff, looking for a reverse of fortunes from their game at the Vindico last Sunday. A full slate on Saturday. Belfast and Guildford Part 2 at the SSE. Fife welcome Coventry up to Kirkcaldy. Sheffield take on Glasgow. Manchester versus Nottingham, and Dundee versus Cardiff in another Scottish weekender for the Devils. And then a couple of games on Sunday, just the 3 into the bargain. Nottingham welcome Fife to the Motorpoint. Dundee take on Belfast. Coventry take on Manchester at the Skydome. And then have a quick look at the National Division as it stands. And well, the Bison are starting to pick up some games, but they're not picking up points, unfortunately, at the moment. They do, however, get something out of the weekend of a 3-game weekend, losing in the shootout. Dan Norton shutting the door on the Bison in the shootout, saving all 3 shots. The Tigers come away with the extra points in that one. On Saturday, though, as you can see, a couple of very, very close scores, and then one that definitely wasn't. Swindon have had generally quite good returns when they play Solway. They did, of course, lose to the Sharks up in Dumfries early this year, and the Sharks were absolutely hammered by the Wildcats, a 10-1 scoreline. And the Wildcats, who, like we say, are still lurking in and around bits and pieces, and know that the title is very much the thing that they can go for this year, showing no mercy to Martin Grubb's side. The Bison, well, this was one of the big talking points of the weekend in the National Division. They lose 5-1 to Hull. However, it should be noted the bigger loss here was the fact that Max Wright, arguably one of, if not the best netminder in the National Division, out of the game with an injury, and the Bison had to turn to 16-year-old backup Oscar Minton. Now, people who've followed Banners on the Wall social media for a while, I've been told about this young man for quite some time. Bison coaching staff have told me about him. Other people have told me about him. Folk at Guildford have told me about him because he signed to the Phoenix. That this young lad has got something special and thrown in to the deep end, unable to get some points for the Herd in this one. But he makes his National League debut at the age of 16 in relief of Max Wright. But it's the Seahawks who pick up the points and head back to Yorkshire with smiles on their faces, even though, as we can see, for Basingstoke, the future is now. Down in Bristol, then one of those results that MK fans will not be happy. And I know that I can see in the chat there, and I'll go back to it now because Jamie mentioned who would have thought the Lightning would end up only skating 13 players for a game at the start of the season. Injuries, very much the byword for MK at the moment. But normally Bristol is a team that MK would expect to beat, but not on this occasion. The Pitbulls with an overtime winner down in the southwest to get all important points in the playoff race for them. MK left scratching their head ever so slightly, and though MK fans might have been able to raise a slight wry smile as their rivals went down in overtime as well. Another win for the Sheffield Steel Dogs. They beat the Phantoms in OT over in Breton, and then Romford came close. They couldn't get to OT though. And Telford, who, like I say, the form's been up and down, and now we know Finn Howells is back in the National Division, originally stepping back due to work commitments and playing in Division 1. Howells has now moved back to the National Division side and signs for the rest of this season and for 26-27 into the bargain, clearly having managed to settle into whatever work bits and pieces he was doing. But either way, Telford with some points on the board from Saturday, and also look at what is to come when it comes to having added some extra firepower back into the lineup. Howell's very prolific in North 1. Will he be able to turn the Jets back on in the National Division? We will find out. Bob Mitchell-King, I can see there in the chat. Excellent game at Telford on Saturday. End-to-end fights and a goalkeeping showcase from CC and Norton, which is what we like to see. We love entertaining hockey wherever we can find it. Sunday in the National Division, though, and Oscar Minton got the start, and not arguably the greatest of results, not given some of the support he really probably would have wanted from the guys in front of him. The Bison running out of steam at the end of a 3-game weekend. Sheffield take that one comfortably by 7-1. Solway's weekend goes from bad to worse, only getting hammered by 1-0 side on the Saturday. They lose 5-1 away in Leeds on the Sunday. 4-point weekend for the Wildcats. They headed across to Romford and got themselves cup qualification secured properly into the bargain by beating the Raiders 4-1 at the Sapphire. 4-point weekend as well for Hull, beating Peterborough in the shootout at the Wellsmans versus Hull Arena. And MK, well, they did get their revenge in the end. The loss on Saturday down in the southwest. They cheered themselves up with some Gregs, headed home, and then gave the Pitbulls a bit of a kicking back in response. 8-3, the final in that one. The National Division table then at the moment looks like this, and well, it still makes some pretty good reading, all things considered, for the Swindon Wildcats. 38 points from 23 games, 2 points clear of the Dogs with 2 games in hand, 3 points clear of the Knights having played the same amount, and that top 3 already, like we said, starting to pull away. Peterborough in 4th place, MK's 3-point weekend keeping them in 5th, Hull up to 5th after a 4-point weekend for them as well. As you can see there, 27 points between 4th and 9th is separated by 7 points only. Bristol there, 24 games played, 20 points on the edge of the playoffs. They trail Romford by 2 points. Bison, 5 games in hand still over Bristol, Romford and Telford. The Bison, though, they need to start picking up results. Scoring has been the issue so far for the Bison. The Sharks, bottom of the table at the moment, still 14 points from 23 games. Just having a look at that from Bob. Tigers iced Rhodes Mitchell iced your boy for 70 minutes over 2 games last weekend. Ouch. Martelli skated over 30 minutes last weekend per game, I would assume, on that one. What we will though, just to make the point, because the Cup has finished and the MK Lightning are on the outside looking in. Last year's playoff winners and the 2024 Cup winners will not make the semi-final. Sheffield win the Cup group, followed by Leeds, Swindon and Peterborough getting some points meant that they were able to squeak over the line. We await the full semi-final lineup, but we will get Sheffield, Leeds, Swindon and Peterborough heading into the semi-finals of the National Division Cup. The fixtures then in the National Division for this upcoming weekend. The graphics, of course, fantastically done as ever by the wonderful Max Van Mullen. Obviously, a much happier boy given the fact that the Buccaneers have started winning some games into the bargain. Saturday, though, the Bison are back to it. They take on the Sheffield Steel Dogs again, looking to get some revenge after Sunday. Bristol take on Telford down at the Pound. Hull take on Romford. MK versus Leeds. That should be an interesting one given recent results. And can Solway not ship 10 goals against the Wildcats this time up at Dumfries? We will find out on Saturday evening. And then Sunday in the National Division, the Nell Classico at the Castle, Leeds versus Swindon. Peterborough welcome Solway. Romford take on Hull. Sheffield versus MK. That could be a very, very interesting game. And for what seems like the 4th or 5th time in the space of a few weeks, Telford welcome Basingstoke back to Shropshire. That's the Elite League and the National Division done. So we will pause momentarily, if nothing else, just so I can bend down and pick up a glass of water. I just have a swig of that. So yes, obviously some big bits of news there. For the fact, interesting to see what the Bison are going to do with Max Wright. Oh, it has been confirmed, Jamie. My apologies. I had not had the time to check. I've been running, like I say, running a bit behind. Oh, it was an hour ago. Great. Just before a game on air. Fantastic. Yep, there it is then, confirmed. Dates are still to be confirmed. Sheffield choose Peterborough, and the other semi-final is the Nell Classico. Sheffield versus Peterborough, and the winners will face the winners of Leeds and Swindon for the National Division Cup. That should make some very, very interesting semi-finals. I don't think that's a bad draw for Swindon, it should be said, because I think they will fancy their chances against Leeds. Understand totally why Sheffield have chosen Peterborough in that sort of sense. If you're Slava Kulikov into the bargain, you built that Peterborough side, you know how to beat them. And also as well, there is whilst the points totals are very, very similar, form at the moment and how those teams are running, if you're Sheffield, why would you choose the two teams with you in the title race when you can choose the team that is not? Is the answer to that one. So totally appreciate that one. Very, very some good semi-finals. Obviously, we will wait to see what we get in terms of dates on those ones. The other bit of news actually out of the National Division that I've forgotten, speaking of Sheffield, was Bailey Yates returning to the UK and signing for the Sheffield Steel Dogs. After a couple of years in Canada. Not a player I'm familiar with. Interested to see how he gets used. Will he spend some time with the Scimitars, of course, down in North 1? Remains to be seen, but we will, of course, keep tabs on that. With Logan Nielsen having gone from the Sheffield Steelers, of course, there is a little bit of flux there to be had because the Steelers obviously need to make sure they maintain their brick quota for roster purposes. Will we see Ivan Bjorkley-Nordstrom fully move up to the Elite League? It has been talked about. I know he's very, very popular with the fans and a lot of the players there. So we will see what happens on that front. What we will do, he says apologies, just because he's just got a bit of a... managed to catch something there. I think I had a bit of a nosebleed earlier as well into the bargain, so just making sure I've not bashed it again. What we will do, though, is we will click some buttons. We'll do that. Oh, hey, there we go. Let's talk about the rest of the NIHL before we talk about the other bits and pieces, because of course Matt Maurice has left the Solihull Barons after this past weekend. He has joined Telford Tigers too. So Finn Howell's back to the National Division, and Matt Maurice brought across an interesting one for me, and I don't necessarily know why you would make that decision when Solihull are very much in the title race, albeit, as you can see from this one, a massive result in the title race in North 1 off the bat on Saturday evening. Blackburn winning by 7-2 at home against Solihull, 4-0 up inside 24 minutes, and ultimately the Hawks just far too strong on this occasion against the Barons. The Barons he travelled with, a longer bench than Blackburn turned up with at home. Jacob Race and Henry Adams with the goals for the Barons. A hat-trick on the night for Adam Barnes. He loves to show up in the big moments, does the number 88 for the Hawks. The other goals coming from Chaz Thompson, James Royce, James Riddick and Liam Charnock. And well, with Finn Howells going, you'd wonder where some of the offence would come from. Not a bit of it. Vladimir Luka with 6 goals in a 9-1 away victory against the Leeds Knights 2. Utterly ridiculous scoring. Vladimir Luka is on an absolute worldie of a thing at the moment. Let's put this into perspective as well. The fact that this was game 17 of the season for Telford Tigers 2, and Vladimir Luka has 36 goals and 22 assists. What ridiculous numbers are we talking about here? The other goals for the Tigers coming from Dan Mitchell, Brady Jesson and Jason Silverthorne, who himself had a 5.9, as did Charlie Webb. He had 5 assists on this one. The lone Leeds Knights goal coming from Kurt Baumanis. And then, well, D-side had been almost defensively responsible over the last little while. And then we get D-side Classic back. Why defend when you could not defend? They give Billingham, they drag Billingham into their game, and if anybody's going to play D-side hockey and win, it's going to be D-side. Jet Witkowski now has 35 goals on the season after 18 games, so not quite keeping up pace with Vladimir Luka, but still another big win for D-side, who are slowly starting to make a case I would be interested to see what happens in the Cup, given D-side have qualified on this one. But this game was pretty tight for a while. 5-all after 25 minutes because, again, defending. And 6-5 to D-side at the end of the second period. Tied at 6-all. And then D-side, and then Jake Witkowski just decides that he's had enough of this one. And the Dragons end up squeaking out a 10-6 win, as much as you can do. If you just looking at the shot counts, if we just have a look at the shot counts as well, 61 shots for the Dragons, 36 for Billingham. I do love the shot counts at times in this one. Looking at this then, Jake Witkowski with 4 goals and 6 points on the night. Ross Kennedy with 3 goals and 6 points on the night. Colin Cromie with 3 assists. Matt Barlow with 2 goals and 3 points. Charles Phillips with the other lone goal. A 4-assist night for Reece Edwards. For the Billingham Stars, 2 goals for Michael Elder. Goals as well from James Moss, Chris Sykes, Lucas Campion and Ian Brown. A 51 save night from Jacob Hammond. Clearly in the firing line off the back of that one. Tyler Delapetouche with 30 out of 36. Into Sunday then, and while Solihull were looking for revenge, they did not get it. The Hawks with a 6-point weekend, huge for their title challenge. Another goal on this season as well for Sam Zajac since joining the Hawks. But the Hawks holding on. A late goal from Alex White made it interesting, but too little too late. Sam Zajac, Jack Brammer and Luke Watson with the Hawks goals. Lucas Price and, as we mentioned, Alex White with the other one. We remains to be seen what happens with Tom Barry, thrown out of the game in the second period for checking to the head. And then, if he's still lurking around, another good one for Luca and the boys from the Widnes Wild. They get some points on the weekend, beating the Leeds Knights 2 by 7 goals to 3. Widnes 4-0 up inside quarter of an hour in this one. An absolute demolition job in the end from the Wild. 2 goals for Flynn Massey, 2 for Michael Gilbert, and goals as well from Luke Alston, Andrew Hopkins and Josh Guy. Goals for the Knights coming from Lawrence Dean, Tom Dermott and Helgi Bjarnason. Just checking how Luca did. 25 saves on 28 shots. Ollie Booth with 32 off of 39. Still love the fact that Leeds Knights 2's other goalkeeper is called Orson Groot. It's just an amazing name. And well, Vladimir Luka had himself a night on Saturday. Just the 2 goals on the Sunday. He has 38 in 18. But either way, Telford with goals galore this weekend. They beat the Nottingham Lions by 10 goals to 2 on Sunday. Just bonkers numbers. Of course, Alex Rushby scored again, because Alex Rushby also always scores, or at least finds a way to get a point somewhere. Liam Morton Shaw with the other goal for the Lions. A 5-goal night, though, for Jason Silverthorne. It wasn't enough for Vlad Luka to have a go. Jason Silverthorne decided he was going to have one into the bargain as well. 2 goals for Ollie Hunt, 1 for Charlie Webb, and another 2, as we mentioned, for Vladimir Luka. This upcoming weekend then in North 1, Billingham versus Widnes at the Forum on Saturday, and a rare Saturday home game for the Stars. 7:30pm at the Castle, Leeds Knights 2 versus D-side. Into Sunday, a home game, and a big one this one, a big chance for the Scimitars to finally get themselves on the board. They have a 12pm face-off against the Nottingham Lions at Ice Sheffield. 5:15 over in Queensferry, D-side versus Solihull. Billingham versus Telford is League and Cup at the Forum on Sunday in a double home weekend for the Stars, and Widnes take on Blackburn at 5:30pm as well. If we just have a quick look at the table, as we can see, the gap is now 8 points for the Hawks over the Barons, having played the same number of games. It looks like it's going to be those two. Blackburn undefeated at home, all 10 games at the Hawks' Nest, won in regulation. At the bottom, Sheffield 0-20 and 44 goals scored in those 20 games. The Cup still very much undecided. D-side have qualified and will make it and will play in the semi-final. It's just a matter of where they finish in the grand scheme of things. The only team locked into their place, as we know, is Blackburn. That looks like the water you are drinking. The drink from the ceiling. You think it was, but no, it's just a funny colour just because of the light as much as anything. But no, the water. Fortunately, not tons of it, but enough where it did the damage. 35 plus 37 in 18 games. Wow. Yes. Can you? Here's a question actually for folk like John. How do we think? Right. How do we think Vladimir Luka would do in South 1 compared to North 1? Stick that in the chat. interested to get those thoughts in whilst we're going through South 1. League game down in Gosport on Saturday, and a win for the Streatham Redhawks. Alan Lack, of course, having moved across from Chelmsford to the High Road. His first game, he did get a penalty, managed to get an interference penalty on this one, but very much the Aidan Doughty show in this game. A 4-goal night for the Redhawks number 91 as the Redhawks ride into Gosport and ride out with a 7-3 win. Goals, 2 from Liam Coleman and 1 from Harry Harcup for the Devils. Goals for the Redhawks, as we said, 4 for Doughty and a 5.9 for him. 2 from Luke Brittle, the other goal coming from Harvey Stead. Oh, pressed too many buttons there. Down at the Sapphire, another win for the Romford Buccaneers over Swindon Wildcats 2. They got their first win of the season a couple of weeks ago. The Bucks as of Saturday night are up to 3 wins already, and this is despite having been 3-0 down, fighting all the way back, and eventually going from 3-all to 4-all. And Tom Wilson's first goal of the season, not that Tom Wilson, a very different Tom Wilson, but he certainly probably felt like he could take on the world like the other Tom Wilson, given this one. The goal at 57-53, giving the Bucks their third win of the campaign. Along with Wilson, the other goals for the Buccaneers coming from Shea Woolmore, Cole McCluskey, Harris McClellan, and Artyoms Kazakhs. Goals for the Wildcats 2 coming from Sam Rye, Tom Ashmore, 1 from Jay Warren, and 1 from Jake Williams. Our boy Max Van Mullen, 34 off of 38. Tyler Perry getting some much needed minutes. The lone netminder sent from the Wildcats 2. Sensible move, this one, I think. Tyler Perry now back in contention, able to play after having another operation to get rid of some tumours that he had as a result of an illness that he has. But clearly needing some ice time, playing for the Wildcats too, some first ice for him in a couple of months. Congrats to Tyler on getting back on the ice. Great to see. In the Challenge Cup, so the extra competition they've got in South 1, Chelmsford a pretty convincing victory, 6-1 over Invicta in the local derby. Mads Toon with the lone goal in this one for the Dynamos. Grant Bartlett with a couple of goals on the night, as well as a couple of goals from Sasha Maltsev. Tom Saw and Halden Barnes-Garner with the other one. I believe it's now 700 points for Bartlett as a Chelmsford chieftain. Some pretty impressive numbers for him in this game. And whilst obviously not affecting the league standings, and there's nothing bad about making an impression. A good night in net for Brandon Stones, getting a start over at Ross Miller in this one. Invicta, though, they did manage to get something out of the weekend in league action on Sunday at home. They beat the Solent Devils by 5-2. Game was tied at 2-2 at the end of the second period, and no goals at the end of the first period. No goals in the second. But ultimately, a natural hat trick from Mads Toon before Aaron Connolly put the finishing touches on that one. 3 goals for Toon, 2 for Connolly on the night. The goals for the Devils in this one coming from Chris Necrosavicius and Cam Buckle. The Chieftains, well, they won, having beaten Invicta in the Challenge Cup on Saturday. They beat the Buccaneers in the league on Sunday. Not a double weekend for the Bucks this time out against a pretty strong Chelmsford side. Uri Husker getting the lone consolation goal at 34:06, and then the third, well, just played its way out ultimately. Cam Bartlett, 2 for Grant Bartlett, Sasha Maltsev, Halden Barnes-Garner, and Tom Saw with the goals in this one for the Chieftains. I had missed the shot count on this one. 51 saves from Max on Sunday. Defending, please somebody help him. Slough, of course, have been a force to be reckoned with, and they are making quick work of a lot of people. Given a bit of a test though down at the Link Centre against Wildcats too. 6-3 the final score in this one, but ultimately the Jets still not lost in regulation in the league so far this year. Goals for the Cats in this one coming from Shannon Taylor, Dan Bradley, and Jan Kostel Jr. For the Jets. Ollie Hemmings-Marr, Jacob Soper, Juhal Lindgren, Carl Bradburn, Luke Smittle, and Sebastian Moore. I'm just double checking because I know Shannon Taylor played. I was double checking whether both Taylors played because it looks like both Costals played. So of course Swindon with 2 father-son duos. This upcoming weekend, not tons of games again in South 1. They seem to be on a very, very light schedule until after Christmas at points. Solent versus Chelmsford is a 5 PM face-off down in Gosport. 6:30 at the Hangar for a big one. Slough, Streatham in league and cup action, and then Invicta take on Cardiff in a league-only encounter. That's 7 p.m. down in Gillingham. Challenge Cup action on Sunday at the Riverside. Chelmsford versus Streatham, and the Wildcats too take on the Solent Devils. That is a 6:30 p.m. face-off at the Link Centre for that one. Looking at the league table then, Chelmsford still top, 1 point clear of Streatham, who have 2 games in hand. Slough are yet to lose in regulation, as we noted. 25 points from 9 games, 4 games in hand on Chelmsford, with being 3 points back. 2 games in hand on Streatham and 2 points back. It's very much still advantage Slough if they can find a way to win those games in hand. Nothing decided in the cup as of yet. North 2, and well, as we talked about, the Sheffield Scimitars have been the head scratchers. The fact they just don't seem to be able to win, and then the Sheffield Titans just do not seem to want to lay down and die. They are absolutely smashing their way through North 2 at the moment. No points in from either overtime wins or overtime or shootout losses. They either win or they don't. And at the moment, the Titans win, and they win a lot. 8-2 they win over in D-side against Dragons 2. On Saturday evening, in another pretty convincing performance from the Titans. 2 goals from Lewis Swaffield, 2 from Scott Howes, 2 from Tom Humphreys, and goals as well from Rhys Wickens and Sam Parkin. Noah Percival and Lewis Edward with the goals for Dragons 2. A much tighter game at the Sky Dome on Saturday evening, as the Coventry NHL Blaze managed to get their way past Altrincham. Another late winner for Coventry, as we can see here. No goals in the first period. Nick Alley and Josh Milnes cancelling each other out within a couple of minutes of each other. And then it is Joel Gavigan with that late winner as Coventry sneak another 3 points out of bits and pieces again. They did massively dominate the shot count, 49-22. But either way, it's the Blaze who managed to pick up the points in this one. In a game that wasn't close at all, on Sunday, Billingham smacked Bradford around. Bradford, of course, who were miles ahead and ended up losing to Lions 2, giving them their first win of the season. Well, the Buccaneers were 9-0 up by the end of the second period in this game. Jared Knowles eventually breaking the shutout of Ryan Wardell in this one. But for the Buccaneers, a hat-trick for Stephen Wallace, 2 goals for Sam Dowd, and goals as well from Artem Pavlov, Chris Lutz, Josh Nertney, and Ash Lavery. And Lions 2, well, they had their big moment in the sun last week. They did not get it this week, as the Coventry Blaze hang an 11 spot on them, an absolute shellacking at home. Tyler Poole thrown out at the end of the second period into the bargain, and the Blaze with a 6-point weekend. 2 goals from Nick Alley, 2 from Harrison Sumner, 2 from Arthur Brooks, 2 from Sam Prosser, as well as goals from Ashton Rudkin, Ethan Wielden, and Ollie Harris. It is a combined shutout of 20 shots. Hayden Laverick facing 13. Owen Chester with 7. James Guest faces 67 shots in that game. Not many games in North 2 this upcoming weekend. D-side 2 versus Nottingham Lions 2 on Saturday over in Queensferry. That is a chance for the Lions if they can find a way to get their second win of the season. Coventry take on Billingham. That could be very interesting given the last couple of results. That's at the Sky Dome at 6:30. Sutton back in action at 6:40 at Sheffield. They take on the Kingston Sharks. Just the lone game on Sunday. Nottingham welcoming Sutton to the NIC. That could be a tough one for Lions too. Just looking at bits and pieces as it stands, well, the way it is, Sheffield have already technically qualified for the playoffs. Enjoy that one. They have played 4 more games than Sutton and have an 11-point advantage. You heard that right. Work out the maths. Sting need to run the table. Down at the bottom, though, as we can see, though, the Lions out of the Goose Egg Club. They have their 2 points from their win against Bradford in the cup. Titans are guaranteed as top of Group B, and Blaze are second in Group B. Sutton and Billingham still need to work out who will win. One will play one will play the other. Oh, it also helps if I actually press the button so it takes us through into South 2 to look at these bits and pieces. And For those old ones, what's rule number 2 of BOTW? You can put that one in the chat because the Invicta Mustangs were very much on form on Saturday. An 8-2 win, comfortable win for them against the Cardiff Canucks. A horrible long journey home for Trevor Hendricks' side off the back of this one. Invicta 4-0 up at one point in the first period, and ultimately just too strong for the Canucks on this occasion. A hat-trick on the night for Sam Oliver, 2 goals as well from Joe Bliss and Jake Steadman. Lloyd Fuller with the other goal for the Mustangs, 2 goals from Henry Stanley on the board for Cardiff. Heath Prentice getting the whole of this one for the Mustangs. And then, well, Lee Valley can always be relied on for some goals, and their social media admin said, I've got tons of things to say, but they never. I need them to win before I can say any of them. A big win. It's been a tough start to life in South 2 for the Thunder, but the home fans not left disappointed. An 11-4 victory for the Thunder over Lee Valley in this one, and a pretty substantial night for guys getting some numbers on the scoreboard in this one. As we can see here, a hat-trick for Marks Canis, 2 goals for Josh Hickman, 2 for Harry Mugabe and 2 for Xander Robinson. Goals as well from Sam Peters and Ryan 1-4. Goals for the Lions from Josh Freeman, Matt Hamilton, Lee Hounslow and Joe Miller. And Guildford, well, they need Peterborough to slip up if they want to have a chance of retaining their league title, but they made a point of going hammer and tongs and keeping and doing what they can do, which is win hockey games. Chelmsford shut out at the Spectrum in quite spectacular fashion. A 22-shot shutout for Dimitris Volkovs. And yes, I did scroll down to make sure I could say his name properly. Hat-trick on the night for the Phoenix captain Nick Minhinnock. 2 goals from Teo Sayer, 2 from Josh Abbott, and goals as well from Sean Reynolds, Jared Vigar, and Daniel Sakantsev. And well, it's been a tough one. It's been an odd one as well this year for Haringey, fluctuating from moments of greatness to utter head scratchings. They go down 7-1 to Oxford at the Oxpens, and what is only can be described as the Chris Beckett show, a 4-goal night from Beckett, and as the Rising Stars give Haringey an absolute kicking with a short bench, and of course, new netminder Petr Cech not getting off to winning ways, but still makes 31 saves into the bargain. Rising Stars goals, as we said, 4 from Beckett and a 5-point night for him. The other goals coming from Sam Arnold, Theo Bundock, and Jacob Smith. The lone goal for the Huskies coming late on in the piece from Ryan Payne. An interesting name there for some of you who may have forgotten, but Brett Massey is back playing hockey again, having retired at the end of last year. A 38 save performance for him as Caleb Poole watched on from the bench. And Peterborough, well, they were only in Eddie Joseph Memorial Cup action, and well, we don't count them out, but they didn't win this one. Invicta lose to Peterborough by 5-2. It was tied at 2-2. Invicta 2-1 up early in the second, but the Phantoms 2 are a different breed this season. A hat-trick for Taylor Romeo, Connor Pollard and Jordan Ho with the other goals there. Lloyd Fuller and James Laming on the board for the Mustangs. Lee Valley, well, they managed to get 5 goals this time and still couldn't find a way to win. Bristol Pitbulls were out with a 9-5 win. There is a goal missing from the game sheet for Lee Valley. As ever, we thank Joe Scutts at NHLstats.wordpress.com for the fantastic box scores that he does for us every week when he's not on holiday, of course. So as we say, we don't know who scored goal 5, but we do know that Antonio Espinoza, Lee Hounslow, Ashley Cave and Josh Freeman scored the others. The goals for the Pitbulls coming from Dean Baker, Ollie Schoen, Lee Duant, Joe Malfatti, Ada McGurk, JJ Crepier, and a hat-trick for Joe Cacavale. Just the one game in South 2 on Saturday. That's in the Eddie Joseph Memorial Cup. Chelmsford take on Slough. It's all league and cup action on Sunday. Solent take on Bristol. Slough take on Guildford. That could be an interesting one. Cardiff take on Lee Valley. MK take on the Oxford Rising Stars. The table as it stands at the moment, as we know, Peterborough not in league action this week, but still undefeated, 13 from 13. Lee Valley on 7 points. They are still within fighting distance of a playoff spot at this point in the season. That's the NIHL structure done. Before we have a look at the SNL and we have a look at the WNIHL momentarily. But now I can assume you, it's just a funny looking glass. And the light. I also need to get my WNHL notes ready because I've clicked the wrong button too many times. Also, that moment of just checking because we've been talking continuously. Is there any other news that we need to talk about? Not that I am. Not that I'm aware of. Nothing has immediately leapt out. I don't, like I say, I was wondering whether we would have had. No, so yeah, no. So the dates for those National Division Cup semi-finals, all 4 games will be completed before Saturday the 31st of January. So they are going to be squeezing them in somewhere. We of course will see what happens as a result of it. I cannot immediately. Just double checking. Well, that's an interesting piece of news, but that's not hockey related. So thank you to whoever sent that to me. Everyone loves a bit of pro wrestling. But yes, nothing immediately leaping out at us at the moment. So yeah, let's pause there for a second. So Vlad Luka with 35 plus 37 in 18. How do we think he'd fare in South one compared to North one? Because I think he would still score a lot of points, but I don't know necessarily, just because the game is a bit different. It's a bit tighter, a bit more structured in the South. I don't think he would score quite as many points. And that's not a case of one league necessarily being better than the other. Of course, we know Solway won the national title. It's now been won back to back by Southern teams, of course, in D1. But and Streatham, and of course Billingham won the playoff final, won the national playoff final against Slough. So definitely good in both sides. But it does always feel a little bit like North won. And I appreciate that Sheffield are a bit of a world case. North one, there is greater parity between the sides. But the propensity for high scoring games is much higher with it. In the South, I think there is a wider gap between the top and the bottom. But the hockey is generally a bit more structured, and the teams in the middle are closer together than I think the teams in the middle of North 1 are. So, for example, there is a bigger gap for me between Hull and Widnes than there is between Swindon and Invicta, for example. So I'd be really interested. What do we reckon? Stick that. If you're watching on catch up, stick it in the comments. If you're chatting now, how many points do we reckon Vlad Luka would get in South 1 compared to North 1? As we take a moment very, very briefly. Now, I will apologise because I have not done my terrible fixture graphic for the SNL. I ran out of time. One of the games, of course, that we do know that will be coming up is Whitley versus Paisley, second leg of the Scottish Cup. That is this coming Sunday at Hillheads, with Whitley leading 4-1 from the first leg played in Glasgow. Either way, we'll have a quick look at the results from the last weekend in the Scottish National League. And well, Kilmarnock getting some goals on the board, but ultimately Dundee riding into the galleon and giving the Thunder yet another walloping. 13-4, a hat-trick for Grant Reekie into the bargain. Of course, John Dolan picks up another goal into the bargain in this one. Another solid win for Kirkcaldy. They've now beaten the top 2 in back-to-back weekends. They end of the Capitals winning run, and now have beaten Whitley in regulation as well. Alan Anderson and Callum McLaren with the all-important goals for the Kestrels against Phil Edgar's goal for Whitley. North Ayr get themselves a point. It goes all the way to the shootout. Quite short benches for both sides in this game, according to Callum over at SNL Ice Hockey Updates over on Facebook. But ultimately, the Lynx do get the extra point. But that point, of course, will move North Ayr above Solway in the table. Just the 2 games then on Sunday. He says quickly clicking some bits and pieces just so we can move this up so everybody can see it. But Whitley beating Solway by 3-1. The return to action of Dean Holland, of course, banned last year for the 18 games for that cup check. That cup check manoeuvre, hitting a guy in the groin with his stick. Back on the ice and back on the score sheet for the Warriors as they take the points against the Sharks SNL. And then Dundee had a good Saturday, but not a good Sunday. A 3-2 win for the Paisley Pirates up in Glasgow. Aidan Wilson with the all-important game-winning goal for the Glasgow side. I have to move that back down because otherwise when I do this, it won't fit on the screen. The SNL table then, as it stands, Whitley back at the top of the table at the moment after that win over Solway, but Edinburgh still have 5 games in hand, and that is obviously means that it would take something. Well, take nothing short of a miracle for Edinburgh not to get themselves back to the table, given that they only trail away 2 points. Paisley, of course, another good result against Dundee. They're still hanging around. They push themselves in front of the Rockets in the table again, but the Rockets have 4 games in hand on the Pirates. The scheduling is all over the show at times in the SNL. Kirkcaldy, Aberdeen, last year's league winners. They're in 6th, and there is quite a big gap, as you can see, a 9-point gap between 6th and 7th. But North Ayr up into 7th with that shootout loss against the Lynx, and then Solway in 8th spot. Kilmarnock, again, another tough one for them. 14 games played, 14 defeats, 23 goals, 192 against. You'd have to imagine in Kilmarnock's next game they will end up conceding their 200th goal of the campaign, given the way things have gone so far. We then go to have a look at the WNIHL, and there was a big game in the Elite League this past weekend. Last year's playoff winners versus last year's league champions. The Vixens had a bit of a rocky start to the season, and they were on the end of a thrashing from the Queen Bees earlier on in the campaign, but they win out at Hobbsmoat Road and take the win in regulation time. The Queen Bees actually 3-2 up after 40 minutes in this one. Megan Burton and Peyton Fincher had some early goals for the Vixens. Desiree Snook with 2. They got 2 goals in the space of 4 minutes, and Louise Adams had the Queen Bees ahead with a power play goal at the end of the second, but an early goal in the third from Jodie Olsen-Smith, and then a game winner just about 2 minutes later from Alicia Potts gets the Vixens over the line. They get the win in the big game of the Elite League at the weekend. It means that the Vixens move above the Queen Bees as they tuck themselves in 3 points behind Whitley Bay at the top, though as we know, the Beacons have played 11 games already. Vixens have only played 8. The Queen Bees have only played 7. Both teams' destiny is very much in their hands. Guildford have only played 6 games. If they can string a run together, they could also cause a few bits and pieces. The Vixens out shooting the Queen Bees. The Queen Bees actually out shooting the Vixens 36 to 28 in that one as well. The results from elsewhere around the WNIHL. A big thank you to Andrew Day for chucking in a few bits and pieces to help us out with this one. Kingston with that 3-1 win over the Nottingham Vipers. Jazz Little with the opener for the Diamonds. Katie Marsden with 2 goals in the space of 11 seconds in the second period, making it 3-0 before Eleanor Cooper spoiled the shutout in that one. Elsewhere in North 1, big win for the Sheffield Shadows. They beat the Widnes Wild comfortably by 11 goals to 1. Down in South 1, Streatham Storm 2. Well, Streatham Storm's first team have not had a great season. It's been a tough one for Streatham Storm 2 as well, losing 5-1 at home to the Chelmsford Cobras. A big win again though for the Swindon Top Cats. They beat the Firebees by 5 goals to 0. Natalia Roldan Merck, Amelia Williams, Miley Drazy, Ophelia Chesterman, and Lily Endicott with the goals in that one. After as you can see, a big shutout for the Top Cats. Into the North 2, into Valerie. Now Andrew has sent me the goal scorers for this one, because that top game is from Saturday. Leeds 19, Telford Wrekin Raiders 2. The Telford goals coming from Jade Poxon and Heather Metcalf. Let's take a deep breath and see if we can do this all in one go. For the Leeds Roses, 5 for Claire Renkin, 4 for CJ Harrison, 4 for Taylor Simmons, 3 for Morgan Lee Walker, and then goals as well from Sophie Lancashire, Nadia Melenda, and Libby Foster. Madness. And then, of course, the next game was a tie. Kingston Diamonds 2 and Blackburn Hawks drawing 3-all. Katie Taylor with 2, and Kerry Greaves with the other goal for the Diamonds. Goals for the Hawks coming from Ruth Leopold, Rachel Pearce, and Abigail Rawcliffe. In the other game in North 2, Valerie Conference, a win on the road for Whitley Bay Beacons 2. They beat Sheffield Shadows 2 by a score of 6-3. In North 2 in the Elizabeth Conference, a couple of huge wins there and 2 shutouts, as we can see. mad goal totals in the North 2 Elizabeth Conference. Caledonia Steel Queen Bees beating the Leeds Thorns by 23-0. Manchester Storm beat Kingston Diamonds 3 by 16-0. Good, tough one for the goalkeepers there, both ends. Either you're shipping them or you're struggling to stay awake into the bargain. In South 2 Valley, the only game in Division 2 South at all, a 2-1 win down at Gosport for the Solent Amazons over the Chelmsford Pythons. Jess Banner getting the Amazon started there. Equaliser coming from Zinnia Quilter early in the second period, but the game-winning goal coming just over 3 minutes from time. Lucy Gates taking the pass from Miranda Brown to fire home and keep the points on the south coast. In the under-16s division, a big win for the Whitley Bay Beacons up north. They beat the Caledonia Iron Maidens by 10-0, and it was 10 goals as well for the Storm. For them, Manchester beat Sheffield by 10-4. Just the one game in South under-16s. Chelmsford Rattlesnakes for their 5-2 victory over the MK Storm. Just looking at the fixtures upcoming this weekend in the WNIHL, just the one in the elite, that's a 5:30pm face-off. We talked about the fact Guildford haven't played a ton of games, but they are in action. They travel down to the Pound to take on the Bristol Huskies on Sunday. In 1 North on Sunday, Kingston versus Sheffield. That should be a really interesting game. Caledonia Steel Queens versus Solway Sharks in the Scottish Derby. Nottingham take on Widnes. Those are both 7:30 face-offs. 1 South, just the one game. That is Saturday, Firebees versus Chelmsford Cobras. That is a 1:10 face-off at the Hangar in Slough. North 2 Valerie on Saturday, Blackburn versus Sheffield Shadows. North 2 Elizabeth on Saturday, the Caledonia Steel Queen Bees versus Manchester Storm Women. That's a 2:30 face-off if you're up that neck of the woods. Sunday, Kingston Diamonds versus Leeds Thorns. And down in the south, South 2 Valerie on Sunday, Cardiff versus Haringey. Big travel for the Greyhounds down to take on the Comets. And in South 2 Elizabeth, the Lee Valley Vampires versus MK Falcons 2 is at 5:30 at Ali Pally. Sunday at the Pound, 3:30pm for the Bristol Huskies 2 versus Coventry Phoenix. I press that button, and that means we have done the lot, every game, senior game from across every adult division of British hockey, from the Elite League to the National Division to NIHL 1 and 2, North and South. The SNL done, WNIHL done, all levels, including the under-16s. We open the door. Questions, comments, thoughts, feelings, anything you want to chuck in the chat. Let's talk about it now for a few minutes before I have to go put the bins out. And then we will keep rocking and rolling from there. But yes, a pretty busy week. Big win that as well for Solihull to keep themselves in the title challenger goals. Whitley Bay have played a lot of games early, but you can only beat, if you keep winning games, you will put yourself in title contention, irrespective of the fact that the schedule is incredibly all over the place. Now, ultimately, it's reliant on the Queen Bees and the Vixens winning those games in hand, because if they don't, then eventually they're going to have to come up against Whitley again, and that will mean that those games between those sides, we're going to start really getting into big title implications before too long. Really impressive stuff, and I can only imagine. I'm sure it was an absolute corker of a game between the Vixens and the Queen Bees in that one. For some reason, my WhatsApp is showing that I have a message, even though I definitely don't have a message, which is annoying. Just double checking what I can see, because there are a couple of other bits of movement. The one thing I probably should have mentioned earlier, if nothing else, just because of course we talked about the potential of Milan Lucic coming across, and how what that would sort of mean for bits and pieces. And then the Clan signed a player called Brady Risk. I love it when the jokes write themselves, because it just saves me time. Let's quickly pull up Brady. Let's pull up Brady Risk's bits and pieces, because he's not a player I am familiar with. So Risk started the season at Troja Ljungby in the Allsvenskan. They have had a really poor start to the season, have Troja Ljungby, and have sacked their coach. 4 years at the university, well, 3 years technically because of COVID, but 3 years at the University of Alaska Fairbanks in the NCAA before playing a graduate year at the University of Nebraska at Omaha. And so he comes in having played 15 games in the Allsvenskan, but 105 points in 133 NCAA games. That's some pretty impressive numbers, and you can see why. Corey Nielsen will have made the point of calling him into action. Now, I will say this, because if you go and look for Brady Risk on Elite Prospects, he will of course mention that he has a brother. His brother is playing in Germany in the Oberliga Süd for SC Riesesee. Make your own jokes again, I'm not saying anything, but his brother's name is Charlie Risk. Just leave that hanging for a bit. Albeit it should be said, Charlie Risk was part of the Huntsville Havoc side that won the SPHL alongside Cole Ceci last season. So fair play to him. Fair play to him on that one. Who else is this guy playing for? He played in Mont Blanc as well. That's why I recognise the team, but definitely a different thing. But yes, Charlie Risk. It certainly can be. But yeah, so an interesting looking player there for Glasgow fans. Of course, we're in that kind of point now. Christmas coming up, a lot of potential for movement coming around. A few guys being released. Of course, we know that Jakob Sturm was released by the Five Flyers into the bargain. We're seeing guys moving around in the national division as well, even in North One. Not so much elsewhere, although we have seen Telford release a couple of guys in recent weeks as well. But yeah, questions, comments, thoughts, feelings, anything you want to chuck into the chat, please do so momentarily before we have to disappear off and crack on and do the next thing. But yeah, so yes, another non-hockey in that kind of sense weekend for me, because no commentary for me. A busy weekend, of course, though, in the run-up to Christmas, because as you can appreciate, there's obviously bits and pieces to be done. But we'll obviously be keeping tabs on Guildford's excursion over to Belfast. Finishing off the Hockey Stories piece as well. Lots to be done there. Really, like I say, it's just been time to sit down and do it. The problem I find sometimes with doing Hockey Stories pieces is sometimes they can be very, very easy to kind of pull stuff out. But this interview that I've done, there's just so much in it that I can't do it justice by only kind of doing it. But I kind of have to sit down and do it in big chunks. I can't do 5 minutes here and there. Sometimes I've been able to do that with Hockey Stories pieces, particularly some of the historical ones where there's no live transcript. It's all source material more than it is having to go back and listen to people. But yeah, I'm enjoying writing it, but I kind of need to do it right. And there's the bigger issue for me on this Hockey Stories piece. That's why it's taken so long to do. And then once that's done, it's working out what the next one is. But we will get there. We will absolutely get there. It should be a cracker. Like I said, trying to get it out before I'm back in the commentary box. Get it out before Christmas. Give folk a little bit of an extra sort of a festive read. But yeah, it should be a lot of fun. Really, really enjoying it. I think, like I say, I think the characters of the other people that I've interviewed really, really will shine through. Because that's kind of what they are. That's what they are like on these things. Just double checking. I think we are fine on that point. So, as you said, no What's Going Stream in a couple of weeks. We will go next week. We might change up the format ever so slightly and do it as just one big long stream and chat kind of thing, rather than doing all the results. I think kind of like look back at have a bit of a sort of a stock take. But like I say, I will put that out to focus to kind of what they want to do. So I appreciate people like going through all the results and bits and pieces, but we might do something slightly different next week, just to change up bits and pieces, and also just as the end of the year, we're all tired and we can all just kind of shoot the breeze a little bit more about hockey rather than focusing too hard on every single result. And also we'll see whether Milan Lucic has actually signed. Is the big one there. Last call then for questions, comments, thoughts and feelings, anything anybody wants to chuck in. Otherwise, like I say, I've got to go put the bins out. Don't have to do the washing up this evening because I've already done, because I cooked this evening. Cowboy pie was on the menu, and if you cook in this house, you don't have to do the washing up. So that's always tons of fun on that front. But yes, hopefully, like I said, by the end of the weekend, I will have a new roof, which will be pretty awesome. Just double checking something over there, just because I think I'll need to open that window tomorrow and make sure that doesn't stick. That's fine. Either way, we, like I say, the end. It's crazy to think that 2025 is, we are 21 days away. Because what's Christmas? Because Christmas is 2 weeks tomorrow, which is mad. Where has 2025 gone? The beginning of the year, beginning of 2025, I was planning my excursion to Bristol and Deeside, and I was chatting to people about commentating on the Coventry weekend and making sure I was kind of locked in for that and what was going on. And now, like 12 months later, like 11 and a bit months, nearly 12 months later, we're in this weird position that we find ourselves in now, which is pretty crazy, all things considered. But what a mad thing we get. Very, very impressed by it all. That's what that does. These things come up and talk about top fans. I don't quite understand it. I just enjoy you all coming along and watching. It's all good fun. Either way, I think we will call it there. Just because, like I say, there's a few bits and pieces to do before we head off to bed here, and we will release you back into the wild. Bannersonthewall.wordpress.com, your number one source for all things related to British hockey. Follow me on my journey through commentary and relearning the Elite League in the box, thinking your insight into what it means to commentate on the Elite Ice Hockey League, as well as a breakdown of every game that I commentate on. You can check out Guildford versus Fife from this past weekend over on the website, and of course you can check out our Hockey Stories series, long form in-depth pieces of content, both written and audio visual. We go from the 19th century to the present day, behind the Iron Curtain, into war and beyond. We cover the absolute gambit new piece coming soon on that front, and basically 15 years worth of content to go check out over on the website, bannersonthewall.wordpress.com. Head down into the description of this video. You'll get our social links. We are on X, we are on Facebook, we are on Blue Sky. You can get the link as well to 3D Lee. Check out all the 3D printing bits and pieces that you can do, like these signs and these pucks, which are awesome, and also the link to our virtual busking hat over at buymeacoffee.com/BOTW. Help keep the lights on, help keep the wheels spinning, never going behind the paywall, but anything you can chuck in to help us do bits and pieces is always appreciated. It is awesome to have you all on board, and of course the joy of YouTube. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already over here at Banners on the Wall. There isn't just what's current streams, although you get the entire back catalogue of recent years. There's lots of video interviews and game bits and pieces there that you can go check out on the YouTube channel. Like the video, share the video, help keep the algorithm hamster happy, fat and fed. And then, like I said, we'll be back next Wednesday night, 8 p.m. for the BOTW What's Current stream. Lots of fun. We love it. Apologies for running a bit late. Apologies for rushing through some bits, but we got there in the end. Christmas is getting ever closer. We edge day by day towards the business end of the season, but it feels like we're already very deep in the trenches. Hockey is back, the weather is made for it, and it is going to keep being awesome. Be happy, and if you can't be happy, then wherever you are, please do whatever you can to please be safe. As my friend Scotty Woz would say, take care of yourself and somebody else. For bannersonthewall.wordpress.com, this is Anthony Russell saying stay safe, and so long till next time. Have a good weekend, enjoy your hockey wherever you find it, and you can catch us back